Cannibalism in pop culture has always been met with a sort of morbid fascination. There have been many instances of cannibalism in underdeveloped civilizations and instances of people being driven to cannibalism in moments of desperation by hunger. This horrific act, where man turns into a beast and eats his fellow man, has been utilized many times in horror movies to terrify audiences. Some of these films have been inspired by real stories which are even more horrifying. Let us now take a look at 10 disturbing cannibal films inspired by real legends and true stories. But make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications to never miss an update from marvelous videos. The Wrong Turn franchise. With 5 films and 2 reboots, the Wrong Turn franchise was created by Rob Schmidt, Adam Cooper, Bill Collage, and Alan B. McElroy in 2003. The first 5 films revolved around different families that consisted of deformed cannibals who hunted people in West Virginia, while the reboots talk about an old cult that doesn't take kindly to strangers trespassing on their land. Though the franchise seems too outlandish and horrifying to be true, it has roots in reality, as it was inspired by the Scottish legend of Sawney Bean. Born Alexander Bean, Sawney tried his hand at the family trade of hedge trimming and ditch digging, but he didn't like it. So he married the love of his life, Black Agnes Douglas, a woman accused of witchcraft. The duo set their house up in a coastal cave and went around robbing people. Once they ended up cannibalizing one of their victims and realized that as long as they found people to kill and cook, they didn't need to work. Soon, Sawney's clan expanded to 8 sons and 6 daughters who all helped him lay traps around their cave and frame their murders as animal attacks. Sawney had 32 grandkids who were all rumored to be the products of incest among his children. Although there's no strong evidence that Sawney ever existed, his clan sure has a lot of creepy similarities with the families in Wrong Turn. The Hills Have Eyes. The Wrong Turn isn't the only movie franchise that Sawney Bean inspired. After Wes Craven's directorial debut, The Last House on the Left, released in 1972, he began to feel that the genre of horror was constraining and aimed to make a movie that didn't involve bloody violence. But he soon realized that was nearly impossible, as every producer he met wanted to see gore in his movies. When financial constraints began to stress him out more, Craven decided to write another horror and hid the books in the New York Public Library. During his research, he found out about Sawney Bean and his clan of cannibals. We told you about his horrible deeds earlier, and now let us tell you about his capture. Many innocent people were hanged in the search for the real culprits who were hard to find. Once the Bean gang tried to ambush a married couple, but as luck would have it, the husband was well trained in combat and fought them off. Unfortunately, though, he was witness to the cruel fate his wife was subjected to at their hands, and he fled to the magistrate to make a report. A search party, including bloodhounds, was sent out for the cannibals by the king, James VI of Scotland. They eventually found the cave the Beans called their home. The clan wasn't allowed a trial as they were regarded as subhuman. People cut off the genitalia and limbs of Sawney and the men of the clan, allowing them to bleed to death, while the women and children were burnt at stakes. Craven found this inhumane punishment ironic, and the legend inspired him to write The Hills Have Eyes in 1977, a movie about cannibal savages in the Nevada desert. The crew wasn't very enthusiastic about the movie, but Craven's passion drove them to become more involved in the film. Survive! Originally titled Supervivientes de los Andes, which means Survivors of the Andes, Survive is a 1976 Mexican film directed by René Cardona in which a rugby team stranded in the Andes Mountains needs to make a choice between death by starvation and survival by cannibalism. Though the movie was considered irksome, crude, and borderline idiotic, everyone was appreciative of the true story that inspired the film, which was the crash of the Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571. Ironically known as both the Miracle of the Andes and the Tragedy of the Andes, the crash of the Fairchild FH-227 airplane is a story of resilience and hope. The plane was flying 5 crew members, the players in the Old Christians Club rugby union team of Montevideo, Uruguay, their friends and family members, and Graziella Mariani, who bought a last-minute ticket to her daughter's wedding in Chile. Thanks to harsh weather conditions, the plane crashed in the Andes, immediately killing many on board. The survivors managed to stretch the supplies for a week, but were then forced to eat the flesh of those who weren't lucky enough to survive. Nearly 2 months later, realizing that no rescue was headed their way, 3 survivors trekked up the mountains and climbed down to Chile, where they found help, spread the news about fellow survivors, and influenced a helicopter rescue. Survive is just one of the many movies that their daring survival influenced, as it also led to the 1993 movie Alive and the 2023 film Society of the Snow. The story also inspired the show Yellow Jackets, which is about a plane crash carrying an all-girls football team. Hillside Cannibals. Sonny Bean seems to be the star of this list, as we have another flick that honors his legend. The 2006 mockbuster Hillside Cannibals was directed by Lee Scott and centers around the inbred descendants of Sonny Bean, who are spread out in the caves of the Mojave Desert and butcher any traveler naively making their way across the desert. Since we've already given you a rundown of Sonny's life, let's talk about the debates surrounding his legend. The legend claims that Sonny's real name was Alexander Bean and he existed in the 16th century in East Lothian. The story first appeared in the Newgate Calendar, a crime catalog with the subtitle The Malefactor's Bloody Register. That subtitle is enough for anyone to realize that the crime catalog was today's equivalent of clickbait, and like most clickbait, the story isn't believable. Many think it's a retelling of the Christy Cleek legend, a folklore cannibal, while others believe it's a political propaganda to stir up anti-Scottish sentiment. Newspapers from around the time that Sonny seemingly existed don't speak of any of the events mentioned in the legend, making it clear that Sonny Bean was just the result of overactive imaginations. Ravenous. In the 19th century, Captain John Boyd led his regiment on what was supposed to be a straightforward rescue mission. The mission goes awry after the men are ambushed and hunted down by a ravenous cannibal. This is the crux of the 1999 movie Ravenous, directed by Antonia Bird and written by Ted Griffin. The movie flopped at the time of its release, but eventually garnered a cult following. Griffin wrote the movie with the intent of expressing cannibalism as a metaphor for manifest destiny, a 19th century belief that American settlers needed to expand westwards across North America, equating inhuman hunger with the pursuit of wealth. He was inspired by the Donner Party and Alfred Packer. We're going to take a look at the Donner Party in more detail soon, so let's take a look at Alfred Packer now. Packer was known as the Colorado Cannibal, and he's one of only 4 people to have been convicted for cannibalism in the United States of America. Packer had a hard time keeping a job down as he was afflicted with epilepsy, a disease which in those days was thought to be a sign of insanity. In the 1870s, he set out with 5 men to look for gold, but returned alone. He initially claimed that he had fallen behind and the 5 had died in a mountain storm, but then changed the story that 2 had initially died while the rest ate them. Eventually, suspicions began to rise as he had the belongings of the 5 men, and after their bodies were found, he was convicted of killing them. Cannibal Holocaust. Harold Monroe, an anthropologist, leads a rescue team deep into the Amazon rainforest to find a filmmaking crew who went missing while filming a documentary on Amazonian cannibal tribes. As he discovers their footage, he realizes that they were exploiting the tribe and were inflicting abuse and creating a false narrative instead of filming facts. This is what makes up the plot of the 1980 exploitation film Cannibal Holocaust, written by Gianfranco Clarisi and directed by Ruggero Deodato. The inspiration behind the movie, however, doesn't include any instances of cannibalism. While talking to his son about the media coverage on the terrorism of the Red Brigades, an Italian far-left militant group that subscribed to Marxist-Leninist ideology, he remarked on the lack of journalistic integrity displayed. He believed that the media was sensationalizing the violence with no regard to the actual news. This gets translated in the movie as the documentary filmmakers go to disgusting lengths to sensationalize their film. This film is a must-watch if you like Mondo movies. The Donner Party. If you like movies that educate you with the horrors of history, the 2009 Western flick The Donner Party, written and directed by Terrence Martin, might be right for you. As you might have already guessed, the movie is based on the real-life Donner Party, a group of 90 immigrants that faced immense hardships along their journey. In the spring of 1846, the group started from Illinois and was called the Donner Party, as brothers George and Jacob Donner were the key figures of the group. They were heading to California in dreams of vast free land and a better climate. Unfortunately, they started too late, and members of the party were already concerned that they might get trapped by the approaching winter in the mountains of California. In this haste, they decided to take an untested shortcut mentioned only by the guidebook author Langsford Hastings, a dishonest man who had never traveled it but was promoting it to increase book sales. The Hastings cutoff added an extra month to their journey, and they were trapped by a blizzard in the shores of Truckee Lake. As their resources began to deplete, the members of the party took to butchering their pack animals, including dogs. Soon, they resorted to eating the members of their party who died. Their rescue took over 2 months. Their experience remains one of the most horrifying incidents in the history of American emigration. Canniba! All of the movies in this list have a fictional aspect to them. They're all feature films, stories told through the voice of directors and screenwriters, all except this one. Canniba is a 2017 French documentary about the Japanese cannibal Issei Sagawa, which shocked critics with its scary and morally questionable subject. Directors Verena Paravel and Lucien Castaigne-Taylor were criticized for their approach, and many felt they were trying to increase sympathy for Sagawa while his victims didn't get their stories told. Born to wealthy parents in Japan, Sagawa mentions being a disturbed child. He admitted to bestializing his dog and having cannibalistic urges when he first saw a man's thigh in the first grade. When he was 24, he made his first attempt at cannibalism as he followed a German woman home, hoping to kill her and eat her buttocks. But she woke up and drove him away. He was arrested, but the charges were let go after his dad paid a hefty settlement. At 32, while studying for his PhD in Paris, Sagawa invited his classmate, Renée Hardevelt, home and shot her. He committed acts of necrophilia on the corpse and ate parts of her flesh. 4 days later, cops arrested him, and he was deemed legally insane. He was admitted to a mental institution for 6 years, after which he was deported to Japan, where psychiatrists found him sane. He was released from the hospital. The Untold Story. Huang Zhiheng was a compulsive gambler who had first murdered a man in 1973 over debt. In fear of getting caught, he fled to Guangzhou and married Ms. Li, a woman whose parents disapproved of the marriage, so they moved to Macau. In Macau, Huang became involved with the gambling scene. In 1984, when Huang was around his 50s, he got involved in a high-stakes bet with the Zhangs, a couple who owned the Eight Immortals restaurant. The Zhangs lost and promised to pay him back in a year. In August 1985, Huang entered their restaurant after closing time and demanded his money back. He offered to take over the restaurant and consider the debt paid, but Zhang disagreed. So Huang took his son hostage and demanded that the remaining 9 members of his family tie and gag each other. In the next 8 hours, he stabbed or strangled everyone in the Zhang family and dismembered their corpses. He dumped their remains in the ocean in dumpsters. As the limbs began to surface in the ocean, rumors began to swirl of a cannibal active in Macau. Macau police traced the remains back to Huang and arrested him. In prison, Huang committed suicide. This incident inspired Hong Kong director Herman Yao and writers Lau Kam Fei and Sammy Lau to create the 1993 film The Untold Story. If you want historical accuracy, this might not be the movie for you, as it depends heavily on the rumors of cannibalism, which were later found to be untrue. Cannibal! Armin Meiwes gained international notoriety for a truly disturbing reason. He was the son of Waltraud Meiwes, who projected her failed romantic relationships onto her youngest son and made him completely dependent on her. Around the age of 6, he was introduced to home slaughtering and was taught how to gut animals. This experience, along with the stories of Robinson Crusoe and Hansel and Gretel, began to create fantasies of cannibalism in the young boy. In the early 2000s, Armin began working as a computer repair technician and posted advertisements in online forums looking for willing volunteers to fulfill his cannibalistic dreams. He finally met Bernd Brandes, a Berlin engineer who agreed to let him consume him. This truly shocking real story influenced writer and director Marion Dora to make the 2006 movie Cannibal, which centers around the cannibalistic fantasies of the man who makes a deal with the flesh who lets the man eat him. Marvelous verdict! If you hate getting a full night's sleep, you should maybe consider marathoning all of these movies in one sitting. We're sorry for the trauma, but we hope you liked this video, and if you did, please leave us a like so we can give you even more horrifying videos in the future. We'll be back with more videos soon, but until next time, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.